getting back to The Force Awakens, it was a real shame that they didn't follow through with Drew. And I don't really know the full story of what happened there. I know Drew was working on a lot of concepts for that poster with JJ Abrams. And you can find them online now, like some of the concepts that he was working on. It just didn't work out. I don't really know what happened there, but they kind of, toward the end of this 3 movies, they kind of started to explore illustration a bit more. With me in particular, I got to work on The Last Jedi for the Dolby Cinema poster, which that was the first Star Wars poster I got to work.
Welcome to your local Cineplex.
Yeah, that's very frustrating because, to your point of like maybe they think it as that's an old style, and I'm like, well, it will continue to be an old style if you don't embrace it. If you don't do that and you move forward and you keep pushing out illustrated art, then it won't be.
That's all I was wearing, actually.
Oh, there you go. Jaws. So yeah, if you keep doing it, then it won't become this antiquated look. It'll be, that's just the way it is. That's just, posters now have an illustrated look, and they won't get pigeonholed as old style, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, look at Star Wars. I mean, to me, the new Star Wars movies, they went for a kind of photographic approach, which, okay, but Drew did a teaser for The Force Awakens, and I remember when that was announced, and I'm like, yes! If any movie deserves an illustrated movie poster, it's the Star Wars franchise, because It's just like, it's a long history of illustrated movies. And George Lucas, who wanted to be an illustrator and then became a filmmaker, loves illustration, a big fan of illustration. So right. It made sense that they would keep it alive. So I was all hyped, like many of us, to see what the final poster might look like that Drew's going to do. And then they revealed the poster, and a few people thought it was illustrated, but I kind of knew it wasn't. But it had a vibe of, it had a Star Wars feel. It had the feel for Star Wars. And I've got to know the guy behind that poster, whose name's Brian Morton, and he's a friend of mine now. We've worked together on a couple of projects, actually. One of them was the Rise of Skywalker poster right there, which was actually art directed by Brian, and he's responsible for a lot of the really great Photoshop posters that you'll have seen. The ones that, it's Photoshop and all that, but I have a great respect for what they do, and it is pretty incredible. And so, for this one in particular, which is blurred at the moment, but if you look online, you'll find it. It was reminiscent of a poster that was painted for Star Wars when it came out by an artist called Tom Chantrell. And it's kind of reminiscent of that style of movie poster with Luke with a gun, and then Leia's out the side with a gun, and hands with a gun, and there's like pew pew, and Darth Vader in the background. So it's got that kind of vibe going on for it, and it felt like, yes, this is Star Wars. And when I was working on it, so they did the layout and I did the illustration of it, and it was one of those that when I was working, I was like, this could be the main poster. It's that good. It felt so Star Wars to me. I was like, I just thought it has to be. It has to be to me. But it wasn't. It was an international poster that didn't really get much fanfare either, which was a real shame, because I think it was quite a fan favorite. But but yeah, I mean, getting to work on Star Wars was a dream come true. There's no question about that. And so, getting back to The Force Awakens, it was a real shame that they didn't follow through with Drew. And I don't really know the full story of what happened there. I know Drew was working on a lot of concepts for that poster with J.J. Abrams, and some of the, I think a lot of the, you can find them online now, like some of the concepts that he was working on. But it was a shame that it just didn't work out. I don't really know what happened there, but they kind of, toward the end of the three movies, they kind of started to explore illustration a bit more. With me in particular, I got to work on The Last Jedi for the Dolby Cinema poster, which was the first Star Wars poster I got to work on. And then I did a bunch of illustrations for The Rise of Skywalker. I did the IMAX poster, which is this one, and then this international poster. I did one for Real D3D, which was a take on the Tom Jong A New Hope poster, the first poster that was ever done. It was like a kind of a pastiche of that in a way for the new movie. And then I got to do some official Star Wars work for Empire magazine, the covers for Empire, which had Rey and Kylo on, and one with the lightsabers like this, which I kind of was based on a concept from the art director at Empire. And then it just kind of, they wanted it like Return of the Jedi, the one with Luke's hands holding the lightsaber, to kind of feel like that. And that was, so we put, actually, I've got the magazine right here. So it's like,
oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So it's got Kylo's hands in the background, a lot bigger than Rey's, but and then in the very background you got the Emperor, his face kind of in the background. And I don't know, it's just very, it felt right, and it was so I got to work on a lot of artwork for the Rise of Skywalker, which was a real pleasure.
Yeah, is there any other than Star Wars? Because I mean, it's almost like, how do you top Star Wars? But is there any other IP that you would feel like, okay, I made it. I hit the stratosphere. I got to work on this IP. Is there one out there?
Well, Ready Player One was I worked on with a design company, which was one that was a biggie.
Yeah.
And then I got to meet Ernest Cline at the premiere in London, and he said to me, when I work on the sequel, I want you to do the book cover. And I was like, yeah, whatever. Anyway, so when the paperback was coming out, he got in touch. So I got to work with Ernie on the book cover for Ready Player 2, which was a great thrill too. He's such an awesome guy. And when you video chat with him, he's in his garage, and behind him he's got two DeLoreans. One like Parsifal's, and the other one is like a bespoke version. Like I think it's Anorak's DeLorean, and it's got an R2 unit in the back. Awesome. I mean, just an awesome guy all around. So to get to work on that was a real pleasure too. To kind of follow through from the movie poster to kind of sort of, I mean, it's obviously a sequel, but in a book cover it's a bit different, because initially it's like, oh, we could bring, maybe if we get approval from the actors, we could have their likenesses, and I don't think that wasn't a thing. It wasn't gonna happen. So it had to be a bit more, kind of vague about who everyone might be in it and that kind of thing. But it's a kind of a different design approach for a book cover for that kind of thing. But I'm really pleased that came out, and you can find it in bookstores everywhere. And so when I'm in a bookstore, I'm just like, I wonder if they've got Ready Player 2, and go and have a look. And because one of the things I started off doing was book covers. In the early 2000s, I did some work for Penguin Books, and I had a small portfolio online, and it was all paintings, no digital work at all. Because most of my stuff lately is digital over the last sort of 20 years, really. And so the Penguin saw what I was doing somehow. I don't even really know how. They did. And they're like, oh, we really like what you do. We're doing a series of Gunsmoke, which was a long-running TV show.
Right.
And doing a series of books and novels. And we wanted some illustration for the covers. And I was like, yeah, I'm very interested in doing that. And they said, do you work digitally? And it felt like it was a make or break kind of question. It's like, well, if you don't, we can't work with you. So at that moment, I'd had an interest in illustrating on a computer, but I'd never really, my work was more traditional, pencil and airbrush kind of stuff. And so I just said yes, because yes, of course I work digitally.
I do now.
I do now. This moment, actually. So I went out and got a copy of Painter and a Wacom tablet, and I had a short time to kind of experiment, and they wanted to see what it might look like, and so I just kind of worked in the traditional way, but in layers on a computer. I was thinking underdrawing, airbrush, and then over drawing with pencil, kind of color pencil, and then and paints, sort of splatters and things like that, and keeping it a bit kind of organic, not too perfect. And they saw it and they just thought it was great. It's perfect, just what they wanted. So I did that one, and then there was about, I don't know, 4 or 5 more after that, Gunsmoke related ones, and then that was that.
Yeah, that'll be a fun show, or fun book to work on, Gunsmoke.
Yeah, I honestly, being in the UK, I'd never heard of it. I mean, they said it's the longest running TV show in America. Yeah. I'm like, okay. Sorry, I don't know what it is. But if it was in England, it'd be there's a show called Coronation Street, which has been on for ages, and that's the sort of long-running TV shows that I was familiar with growing up. But yeah, I mean, cowboys, who doesn't love cowboys and stuff? So that was really fun. And a real learning curve, because then once people realized that you could work digitally, it kind of actually opened doors. If you could work in that way, but it didn't look digital, but you could provide it digitally and edit it quickly and make changes very quickly, it became a good thing. That it opened doors at that time, because not many people could do that style of work, kind of traditional looking, but rendered digitally, and enable it to be, make quick changes, and you don't have to scan it, you don't have to, it was email was a thing. It was starting to be a big thing too, so that really helped. And you didn't have to send CDs even, you could send it digitally over the internet, and it kind of went on from there. I mean, my career didn't really take off dead quick or anything. It was very slow. It was a slow burn to become an overnight success, from the late 1990s to, I don't know what you'd call the big break, really.
That's good to know. For us starting out, it's It's a
Oh,
slow burn.
you'll find that there'll be a time that you'll be like, people just think you're an overnight sensation, and you're like, no,
Right.
this has
Oh, yeah.
been, I've been doing this for for a long time, and so it surprises some people to learn that, like, oh, you just started like 3 years ago, didn't you? And you're like, no.
I've been here for 10 years.
Yeah, it's like, and then some.
Yeah.
Like, really, I mean, I started illustrating when I was still at school. I was doing work for different things. You know, I would be, my dad's company was a lighting company, and so their catalog, they couldn't afford photography, so they asked me to sketch everything, all their products.
Wow.
I mean, I'd put the product in front of me, sketch it. I mean, it was
That's
like
so cool.
that. So that was like one of my early jobs. I did stuff for a hire company that sort of like hires like, you know, like hard hat kind of stuff, like machinery and stuff like that for like building things, and they needed some safety illustrations doing. So a friend of mine at college and me, we did some. It was all hand line work, you know, no digital stuff. It's just like, and then yeah. Anyway, I mean, I did murals in people's houses.
Wow.
Like Michelangelo, like cherubs, and like, I'm not joking. Like,
Yeah,
like there's like columns and sky and clouds and cherubs, and that was like when I was at university. I was doing that. I mean, it's just like, it's just never. I've been working on. It's just it's been my life really, and so
exactly. Like,
people
how do
just
you
think you
choose the
just
start
like came
point?
out of nowhere, and you're like, no, it's been a long journey.
Yeah, I feel that. Yeah.
But yeah, there's been a lot of like recreating of. I mean, that's what alternative movie posters is all about, and that's what there's a big, you know, a big fan thing of that around the world, especially over the internet. Is like the ability to do your take on it and put it out there and see if people like it, and you know, and if you can make a wave doing that will get you noticed, and then, you know, potentially you could be working on an actual project.
I asked you about your top 3 movies, and you gave me top 5 movies, which is perfect.
So my top 5 movies, starting with number 1, is Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Classic.
It's like number 1 for many of us, I think. Should I just run through them, what they are?
Yeah.
Number 2 is the original Star Wars. I know a lot of people would say The Empire Strikes Back, but for me, I just watched that movie so much growing up that I have to say it's up there. Next one would be Back to the Future at number 3, which is astounding to say the least, and I've been a fan ever since that came out. Number 4 would be Ghostbusters, another one that just hooked me, and I still love it to this day. And number 5 is The Rocketeer, which is a magical movie, which kind of goes back to the Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of era, and includes, you know, I mean, Dave Stevens' character of the Rocketeer is absolutely brilliant. So that's my top 5 movies. Yeah. And for posters, I went with, I just started thinking, like, which movie posters just blew me away on instant visualization. And so one of the ones that actually, one of the first posters I had on my bedroom wall was Adventures in Babysitting that I could remember. And that poster, I didn't even know it was illustrated at the time. I think I was just like, I don't know, it wasn't a great copy of the poster either. It was a very kind of a blurry video rental poster, and but still, that kind of walking up the side of a building, there was something super magical about it. Obviously, Elizabeth Shue I had a bit of a crush on her. But yeah, great movie, and the logo was amazing too. Oh, shout out for the logo. It's just kind of very high impact.
Right, yeah.
Another one, and obviously that was by Drew Struzan. So all of these movies posters are by Drew Struzan, and the reason I picked those specifically is because Drew and his work has had the biggest impact on me, and had the biggest impact on me visually. When I would see his movie posters, they did something to me. Like, just, it was one of those things where I had to question it. Like, why is it making me feel like this? Like, so I would literally, when I get a hold of a movie poster and take them out of my bedroom, I have a magnifying glass, and I would just be poring over it, like kind of just in awe of how this was even possible. How did somebody even create this? It was like we said earlier, it's like magic. It really was.
What
like
magic is this?
Yeah, it was like, how is this even possible? You know, it kind of felt so. It was like, I mean, it was like something touched by God in a way. It was like how.
Yeah.
And actually, I spoke about James Goodrich earlier, and we talked about Drew's work, and we're both big fans of Drew. And we kind of came up with I think it was him that said it first, and I'm like, you just nailed it. Basically, looking at a poster by Drew, for the most part, it was like looking at a miracle happening right in front of you. It was like,
right.
The fact that this is what it is, it was miraculous. It was like a visual miracle. Like, and we're still mesmerized by it. And the Back to the Future 2 poster, which I'm just looking at right now, is one of the ones that I picked. And the reason I've picked this one is just because the textures going on in this artwork. The red jacket that Marty wears from the future, which, I mean, that movie itself is, you know, the outfit that
right.
I died for those. I love those shoes, and the jacket when I was younger. I was like, that's all I wanted. Those shoes, that jacket, and the hat. I managed to find the hat at Universal Studios once, but yeah, the texture on that jacket, I'm like, how did someone render that? You know, it's like, it just blew my mind that this was someone made this by hand. And so yeah, it's just miracle. Then Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, I've picked specifically this, it was called the what do they call it? It wasn't the teaser poster. It was called a teaser poster, but it was actually an advance poster for The Last Crusade, they called it. And it's this image which captures Indiana Jones, the look in his eye. You know, he's ready for action. The sunset behind him. I mean, the gesso marks, which when I was trying to figure out how Drew did this, I didn't even know what gesso was. And so I thought a lot of these brushstrokes were rendered by hand. I just assumed that it was some kind of, because I wasn't looking at an actual painting, I was looking at a print of this painting, and it was flat.
Right.
And it just felt like pencil marks or something. I didn't know what it was. And it was, I mean, how old must I have been when this came out? Let's say 13, I think. All right. 13, yeah. And so I was trying to figure out how he made this. So I was trying to decipher how this was even possible. And still to this day, it's one of my favorite movie posters. It's a perfect example of a portrait also it's not from one still. It's like it's a concoction of a few images together that only a master could put together and make it look real. I mean, it's just it might, I don't know, it's just one of those, another magical thing. Yeah. So, and the next one I picked out as Hook, which when I saw this poster in the cinema, I was just like, well, that's a movie poster. You know, it couldn't be more perfect. The likenesses, obviously, one of Drew's specialities is getting the likenesses right, and this just, everybody looks spot on. And also, you find out later on that actually Drew himself and his son and his wife are actually in this poster, which makes it even more special because the artist inserted himself and his family into this poster, and it's just it's a magical fairy tale poster, and it's kind of sets the benchmark for what a montage illustrated poster should be, and it set the bar really high. And then a few years after that, he came out with Cutthroat Island, which is one of his last movie posters of, you know, good memory. One of the ones that really kind of felt, you know, to me, like a great movie poster. And I just love the feeling of this piratey image. Boats look incredible, firing at each other. The villains look villainous. The heroes look heroic.
Yeah,
you know,
I've never seen it, and this poster makes me want to go see it.
Right, but this is one of those movies that you might be a bit disappointed when you go see the movie. That's the only thing with this, because the movie poster looks so good that the movie can't live up to it. It's a perfect, you know, it's almost similar in a way to the Hook poster, because it even has that kind of treasure map edge, and you know, but it's a lovely looking movie poster. That love it. So that was my 5 movie posters I kind of picked out by Drew, that they just sucker punched me each time the best possible way, and made me love movie posters and Drew's work even more than I did each time, kind of, you know. And that's scratching the surface on Drew's repertoire of what he's done. But yeah, you know, I've been lucky enough to meet Drew a few times, and I went around to his house when I was only 21 years old, and got to hang out with him for a bit of time. And I've honestly, during the period of time when movie posters were moving away from being illustrated pieces of art to more advertising, like kind of photographic stuff, Drew, I was in touch with Drew, and he was a little bit kind of, you know, he could sense that it was on its way down, and I kept saying, it's gonna come back, and he's like, no, it's not, it's over. I'm glad to say I was kind of right. It does feel like there has been a resurgence of this craft, and not only by a small minority, but by, I'd say, hundreds, maybe thousands of people who feel so strongly about it that they actually create stuff, and that speaks volumes. The fan art community, especially. I mean, the fact that people, you know, and that's how many of us started out. It's like we just do this and stuff in our bedroom, just kind of. We just want to try and achieve something, even a glimmer of closeness to something like that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and that's what people are still doing, which is great. Because honestly, I didn't feel like many people were that interested in the movie poster when I was really kind of trying to realize this dream. But now there's so many people who are, they really do care and they love the movie posters, and so Drew is getting to see that as well. Obviously, which is a really nice thing, and he's having some real newfound kind of fame. Like, I think as he was doing these posters, he didn't know really what impact they were having on people. Right. And now he's really finding out that he impacted a lot of people's lives, and quite rightly too. I mean, there's a lot of illustrators who are his contemporaries who even would see Drew's work and be like, how did he do that? And so, he no, I don't think anyone can really live up to that level. We're only kind of trying. I mean, my whole thing was trying to just keep it alive a little bit by kind of carrying on. I didn't want to be known as like somebody who was just copying Drew. I wanted to be something that was like just keeping that vibe alive, almost like that aesthetic. This kind of like, it was more in honor of that, to try and kind of say, look, there are people that don't want this to go away, and we should be trying to keep it going forward, and while not generally keeping a foot in the past, just kind of acknowledging it while moving forward.
Right. Yeah, it's carrying that torch.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way of saying it. Yeah.
Well, that's a perfect way to end it on. Perfect note.
Yes.
So there you have it, everyone. Paul Shipper, thanks so much for joining me on your local Cineplex.
It's been a pleasure, Zach. An absolute pleasure talking to you, and look forward to seeing where your work goes, and look forward to keep listening to your podcast and all the other guests that you're going to have on in the future. So all the best with everything.
All right. Thanks so much.